let's be clear. When we say invest in real estate, that doesn't even necessarily mean that you're investing in an investment property. We're talking about home ownership as well. Like, home ownership is a form of real estate investing. Once you buy a home, it's still your investment. Why? Because as you're living there, it's going to continue to appreciate. But when the lenders are calculating how much they think you can qualify, they're looking at how much you make versus how much you spend. And these car notes are eating us up, which takes me to co-signing for relatives. Y'all better stop it, because I'm getting a lot of, oh man, you only qualify for this lesser loan amount because of the amount of car notes you have. And then you come back and say, well, but only one of these cars is mine. I co-signed for my sister, or my godson needed a co-signer, and I just co-sign for their car. It's theirs. I don't drive it. Yeah, but it's on your credit profile. So it's eating away from your income. That debt is being counted against you. So I hate to say it, but I learned my lesson. And before I co-sign for somebody, if I just have to help, or I feel it in my heart to help, I will help with the down payment that they need to get the car on their own. If they don't pay it, or they're 30 days past due, that affects your credit history and your payment history. I just had an incident where somebody that I know personally, they were sitting at a 750 credit score. They co-signed for a loan for a family member. That family member had one payment that went 30 days past due on that car. Those points dropped 207 points. Welcome, guys. You are tuned in to The Throne, and I'm your host, Matasha LaQuinn, the Queen Bee of Real Estate. And today, you're in for a treat. We're going to be talking about something that is really important, amongst all cultures, actually. It's the growing importance of establishing wealth, okay? And we're talking establishing wealth in general, whether it's stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency. I don't know a lot about that, but I'm going to stay in my lane and stick with real estate. But just the overall importance of investing in general, because if we think about, back in the day, right? If you think about your grandparents or your great grandparents, they came from a time where they would stay at a job for 20, 30 years and retire with pension, and they have their retirement funds set up that way. But if you think about it, we don't hear about that happening too much, right? At this point, we're jumping from job to job. We're looking for the next best opportunity. Like, people my age, they're probably on job number 8 by now. Because let's see, what am I? I think I'm considered a millennial. I think I'm 39, turning 40 this year. Big ups. Can't wait for November, Scorpio season. Had to put that plug in there. But I can't really think of any of my friends that are around me that haven't been at least in 4 different positions, different companies, right? When you talk about climbing the ladder, you're looking for the next best thing, who's paying the best salary. Staying at a job for 20 to 30 years right now is just unheard of, especially when you think about the age group coming in behind us. I think they're considered Gen Z or something. Gen Z just doesn't give a crap. They're just out there living their best lives, YOLO, doing whatever they want to do. So it's even more important for the generation that's coming after us to start thinking about long-term setting up investments, to the fact where if you can't work next year, let's say you get hurt and you're down and out for 6 months, what are you going to do? If you can't go to work tomorrow, you don't have a job, you're sick, you're hurt, you're having a baby, maybe you need to take time off and your job doesn't offer medical leave. What do you do in those cases? And so when we start thinking about retirement and cash flow and mailbox money, all of those things are so important. But obviously, I'm going to talk today just from the perspective of real estate investment as a whole. And when I say investment, people automatically assume that, crap, I don't have money to be an investor, or I don't have vacant land, or I don't know how to do a house flip. Let's be clear. When we say invest in real estate, that doesn't even necessarily mean that you're investing in an investment property. We're talking about home ownership as well. Like home ownership is a form of real estate investing, although we don't think that it is. But when you think about it, once you buy a home, and regardless if your family is going to live there or not as their primary residence, it's still your investment. Why? Because as you're living there, it's going to continue to appreciate year by year. The values go up. And once you reach a certain point, you have enough equity. You can borrow against the equity in your homestead. And when I say homestead, that's another word for your primary residence, right? The home where your family is living. So you don't have to, get discouraged and think, oh God, I'm not ready to be an investor. I don't even own my own home yet. Well, home ownership is a form of investing. Now, I know one of the big topics, especially right now when we are talking about the market and just market trends, the current market is definitely scary. We're looking at higher interest rates. I know that right around COVID or so, maybe 2 years ago, interest rates were at an all-time low, 3.5, 4%. I know I refinanced my home. See, I bought my home in 2016 and I refinanced when the interest rates got lower. So I went from bought my home at a 6% back in 2016, I believe. And when interest rates dropped, I refinanced and now I'm at a 3.25. So the market is always going up and down, right? You get in where you fit in and then you make adjustments later when you can. But I know back when, COVID was here, interest rates were down at the 3.25. Everyone was just a buying frenzy. Everybody was scrambling to buy. Sellers were. And listen, we had a situation. I had at the time my real estate team. I had an agent located in Austin, and Austin, as well as Houston, but more so Austin, was crazy. Like sellers were putting their properties on the market, and one day being on the market, they would have multiple offer situations where it was literally 16, 17 offers on a property. And obviously we know what happens when inventory is at a shortage or inventory is low or there's buying frenzies and there's multiple offers. What happens? People are outbidding each other. We had situations in Austin where the listing price may have been $400,000. And by the time everyone is competing and outbidding each other, the purchase price, the sales price ended up being $550,000, $600,000. I mean, we had times where people were bidding $50,000 to $100,000 over the asking price. That's how crazy it was back then. Everybody was just trying to get in where they could fit in. And then obviously here, within the last 12 months or so, those interest rates skyrocketed. People got really scared about what was happening in the economy, and they started pulling back. Okay, this is not the time to buy. We're scared. We're going to pull out. And so sellers no longer had the advantage, right? Because buyers were not lined up on the curb throwing offers their way. And so the market got a little stale. Sellers got scared. They pulled back. And in addition to that, what was happening during that buyer frenzy, market values were shooting up. Well, when the market got stale, market values started to get steady, and they even started to go on the decline a little bit. Because why? Houses were not moving as fast because buyers were scared. Not only that, you have to think about the sellers. If the seller is going to sell their home, they have to think about where they're moving to next, right? And so when the interest rates went up, sellers also wanted to pull back from selling because it's like, oh, wait a minute, we can't afford to move. Like if we sell our home, where are we going to go after this? And so the market just really did this weird little drop here within the last year and a half or so. And everybody was scared, not really sure what was happening. And so I know a lot of people have kind of been using that as an excuse. Or not, I won't even say it's an excuse because it's a legit fear, right? You don't know what's happening in the market. You want to step back and watch it and let your next move be your best move, so to speak. But things really came to a standstill in the market. But it's so funny because we're looking at, 6-7% interest rates and we're getting freaked out. Well, y'all have to remember, and for those of you that don't know, my grandmother is a real estate broker, which is how I was introduced to the business. But my grandmother has been a real estate broker over 40 years for sure. And she was telling me about a time where she was telling me about a time back in the 1980s. Interest rates were 19%. Like, she was back there slanging houses in 1980 when interest rates were 19%. Why? Because that was what it was at the time, right? You need somewhere to live. You have to, either you're going to rent somewhere, you're going to buy something. And so people still needed a roof over their heads, and they just accepted the market for what it was. And it's like, well, crap, this is not ideal. Interest rates are 19%, but we still got to live somewhere. Let's buy the house. So when I hear her stories of selling properties at a 19% interest rate back in 1980s versus us being so scared right now at 6 and 7%, it's like, yeah, y'all have no idea. Even yesterday in our group chat, our agents, we have a group chat. We always chat up and send each other text messages about what's going on in the market. One of my agents sent out a chat yesterday. It was like an old newspaper clipping where I don't remember what year it was from, but this was a black and white newspaper, so maybe 1950s. But two bedroom, one bathroom. Yeah, 2 bed, 1 bathroom was selling and being advertised in the newspaper for $7,400. I'm like, $7,400? Well, okay, well, give me 2 of those, right? And so times change. The point I'm getting at is times change. Industries, not just real estate, but industries in general, they change, they shift, they pivot. And so the question is, how do you ride the wave, and how do you still move forward and do what you need to do when markets change and when things pivot? You can't use that as an excuse to be paralyzed by fear and to procrastinate. Like, you still have to be prepared to make a move and do something. And so that's what we're starting to see happen now. I think the initial shock of the influx or the increase in interest rates back last year was really scary. It got everybody all shook up. And now it's really becoming steady, and people are accepting it as the new norm. So it's like, okay, I guess this is the new norm, right? They hung out for a while to see if they were going to get a chance to drop back down, to see, okay, are we going back into the Great Depression? Are we about to lose our job? What's happening here? And I think just now, finally, within the last, and just speaking for my own sales team and our own office, I think within the last 4 to 5 months, we're really starting to see people get back comfortable with, okay, let me get my head out of the mud and realize that I'm not going to get a 3% interest rate. That's just not where things are now. But I still have the goal of home ownership. I still need to get a home for my family. I'm tired of leasing. I'm just going to accept the fact that interest rates are at 6% right now. And so let me go and purchase a home that I can afford at the current market, right? At the current market rate. And see, once you become accustomed and you get comfortable with knowing, hey, this is just where things are right now, you can wipe that part out as an excuse. Because if you're not careful, we use the excuses of the market and interest rates and increased values. We use that. And by the time we look up again, we're watching the market. Well, I don't want to make a move right now. I'm watching the market. And time is passing by so fast these days. You wake up tomorrow, and tomorrow is 3 years from now, right? You wake up and it's like, crap, what happened? How am I already in 2027 and I still hadn't made a move? So when we talk about that, we think about the common obstacles. And that, of course, market interest rates being one of them. But the question right now for all of you, well, first of all, the main important thing is to already know and come to terms with the fact that, all right, home ownership, real estate, investing, establishing some sort of asset for my family long term that can help us generate wealth. that we can borrow against in the future if needed because of the equity that can, help establish an additional source of income for my family. Like that is no longer a luxury, so to speak. It's not an option anymore. It is a necessity. Okay. And once you start to shift your mind and realize that, hey, establishing wealth, buying real estate, it's not a luxury anymore. It's not an option for me. Like this is something I need to do. So how do I do that? And before we even go into future episodes and get into the real meat and potatoes of the how and specific investment types and the logistics of how to go about doing it, I think we need to focus on overcoming the mental obstacles or the mental blocks that we have. And not only the mental blocks, but some of them are very real. Some of the blocks, some of the obstacles are very real. And so we need to figure out, I guess, identifying what those obstacles are and being very clear and getting serious about overcoming those obstacles so you can ultimately reach the finish line and accomplish the goal of whether it's home ownership or buying your first investment property. And one thing I know for sure is that in the beginning, before you accomplish anything, the beginning is always scary. But once you do something and it's successful and it produces results, that's where you get your confidence from. That's where it's like, oh, okay, this feels pretty good. Like, I can do this. This isn't so bad. And that gives you the momentum to set another goal and do it again and again and again. And so when we think about what are the common obstacles, like right now, when we think about home ownership as a investment tool for real estate, and then when we think about just general actual real estate investing, investment property, being a landlord, flipping properties, that type of thing. When we think about the common obstacles, in my experience, there's three main obstacles. First obstacle is obviously financial, the financial obstacle. And that obstacle it can be multifaceted. When we talk about the finance bucket, we can say, all right, I want to invest, right? Or I want to purchase property. I want to become a homeowner, but my credit isn't where it should be, right? That's the finance bucket. Maybe you don't have a steady source of income. So maybe you're an entrepreneur, right? And I get this a lot with our entrepreneurs because the cash flow is so wishy-washy. You're just not sure what you can afford, right? Because let's say you're a hairdresser. Let's say you're a hairdresser and this week is a good week for you. You made $3,000 this week. And then next week you can make nothing. And then the week after that, maybe you make $250. And then the fourth week of the month, you make another $3,000. Like you just don't know. There's no steady cash flow for you to be able to properly plan or budget to know what you can afford. So, that's scary because how do you go to a loan officer or a real estate agent and say, hey, I want to purchase a home and I want to be able to pay, my budget is $2,000 a month. You don't know that because you're just trying to make it from week to week, hoping that you have a good week. And the weeks when you do have a good week, you're trying to hold on to that extra money because you don't know what's going to come next week. Or even, let's say maybe a truck driver. I get this a lot with our truck drivers. If you're self-employed, you're going to write off a lot of expenses on your taxes, right? Because you don't want to have to owe Uncle Sam. But your loan strategy and your tax strategy is two different things. And so you make the income. Let's say you make $10,000 a month and then you write off $9,000 in expenses. So you don't have to, pay Uncle Sam as much in taxes. Well, on your tax strategy, that's great. But your loan strategy, whether we're talking about a loan for home ownership or a loan for an investment property, your loan strategy is trash because what it looks like to the lender, you only make $1,000 a month in income. So you don't qualify for anything. And so when it comes to the goal of knowing, okay, I'm in the process of purchasing a property, whether it's home ownership or investment property, I'm going to have to do something different this time. I'm going to have to do something different because the way that I'm moving financially for tax purposes is not going to get me where I was trying to get to on the loan side of things. And so that's an obstacle that we have to overcome sometimes. Some people, let's say you don't have the self employment issue. You're not an entrepreneur. Let's say you're a W-2 employee. Well, in the finance bucket, sometimes what happens is debt to income throws you off because you make the money, but then you make the income, right? So you make the money, but your debt is really high. Maybe there's student loans. Maybe you have really expensive car notes. Let's talk about that for a minute before I get off subject. It's still on subject, but it's kind of off subject. But let's talk about these car notes. Car notes, they're killing y'all. Okay. And I'm seeing it every day. You get a car note. Let's say you have one car note at $600. All right, fine. But let's talk about if you have two car notes at $600. Like, that is digging in deep into your income. That's taking away from your housing budget, right? And debt to income ratio is a whole nother conversation for a different day. But when the lenders are calculating how much they think you can qualify for, and they're using their formulas and they're generating your pre-approval amount for your loan, they're looking at how much you make versus how much you spend. And these car notes are eating us up, which takes me to co-signing for relatives. Y'all better stop it, because I'm getting a lot of, oh man, you only qualify for this lesser loan amount because of the amount of car notes you have. And then you come back and say, well, but only one of these cars is mine. I co-signed for my sister, or my godson needed a co-signer and I just co-signed for their car. It's theirs. I don't drive it. Yeah, but it's on your credit profile. So it's eating away from your income. That debt is being counted against you. So I hate to say it, but I learned my lesson. And before I co-sign for somebody, if I just have to help, or I feel it in my heart to help, I will help with the down payment that they need to get the car on their own before I co-sign for them. Because first of all, it's eating away at your income and what you can qualify for. And second of all, if they don't pay it or they're 30 days past due, that affects your credit history and your payment history. I just had an incident where somebody that I know personally, they were sitting at a 750 credit score. They co-signed for a loan for a family member. That family member had one payment that went 30 days past due on that car. Those points dropped 207 points. 207 points. It took them from being in the 700 club to the 500 club. So be careful with that. But anyway, these are the things that fall in the finance bucket. So even if your credit is where it needs to be, and let's say in the finance bucket, credit isn't your issue. Okay, your credit is good. You can qualify for a home loan, or you can qualify for an investment loan from a credit perspective. Then, and you're a W-2 employee, what it could come to be is that your debt to income is throwing you off. So, hey, your credit qualifies you for something, but your income isn't enough to qualify for you for anything. Maybe you need to, liquidate something, or go pay this car off to loosen up some debt. Anyway, either one of those things that fall within the finance bucket, these are things that can stop people from moving forward on investments. The second most common obstacle that I'm finding is the support bucket, lack of support. And what I mean by that is we're living in an age where we are seeking validation and approval from family members, significant others, social media, and we're asking our family, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house. Like, what do you think? And then you have Uncle Junebug that's never bought a house in his entire life, and let alone, he may be living in the basement of a family member's house, and he's telling you, oh no, not right now, interest rates are high, this is not the time. And it's like, this who you listening to? hey, you guys got to get very comfortable with not sharing your dreams and aspirations with everybody. Like, I understand you wanting input, but make sure you're getting input from the right people. So when it comes to wanting to buy a home, wanting to invest, you're going and ask certain family members, maybe it's even your spouse, right? They don't understand your vision or your goal and what you're trying to do. They don't support it. So you put it on the back burner. It could be a generational thing. Some people, some families that our team represents, they're the first they're the first person in their family to ever own a home or to ever go through the home buying process. And so think about that. Like, this is breaking generational I don't want to say curses, but maybe block, something that has been consistent throughout your family generationally, where everyone's been a renter. No one's ever had the faith or the courage to step out and buy a home. And you're the first one to do that. So, seeking that input or that insight from your family, you may not get the support that you're looking for. So you have to be very comfortable and confident in your own goal and your own vision to say, hey, even if no one else supports me, even if no one else co-signs for what it is I'm trying to do or my idea, I'm sure and I'm for certain within myself, this is the move that I need to make. Hey, Granny, I'm sorry. I know your advice said one thing, but I got to go this way. Hey, Uncle Bubba, I don't know where I'm getting these names from, but, hey, Uncle Bubba, I thank you for your input, but it's time. It's time for me to make a move. I'm going to go against what you may have suggested for me to do. And so you got to get comfortable with that, because a lack of support and people seeking validation from others has been the second most common or biggest obstacle that I've seen that stop people from accomplishing the goal of home ownership or becoming a real estate investor as well. And the third obstacle is, I would say resources, just a lack of resources. And what I mean by that, I could say lacking a few things. It could be lacking the knowledge, right? You've never done it before. So you're not confident because you don't know how to do it. Lacking the right team. So maybe it's like, man, I'm ready to do this. I have the finances in place. I'm prepared. I have the support that I need, but I'm just scared. Who do I trust? Who do I go to as a loan officer? Who do I choose as a real estate agent? Or maybe on the investment side, like, is there an investment consultant that I can trust that actually helps to walk me through this process? Like, I just don't know where to start. Lacking faith, right? Dang, I'm ready to do it. I believe that I can do it. I have the resources to do it, but I'm scared. What if this don't work out how it's supposed to? So when it comes to just resources, I think of the word lack. You're lacking something, whether it's the knowledge and the experience, whether it's lacking the right team to help you get started, or lacking the belief or the faith system. And so once you kind of recognize the obstacles for what they are, now you can begin to kind of tackle these obstacles, right? You think about those obstacles and ask yourself, which bucket do I fall in? Okay. Now let's be honest. Some of us fall in all three of them buckets. Now, if you fall in all three buckets, we got a lot of work to do, and that's okay. But you need to identify, you need to get very clear and honest and truthful, transparent with yourself to think about the obstacles, what's stopping you, so that you can begin to properly prepare, right? Preparation is key. So think about that. Think about what buckets you fall in, and then say, all right, shifting my mindset, I'm thinking about the fact that wealth in real estate, investing, generating income, generating an asset, building, an asset for me and my family, it's no longer an option, right? We've talked about the fact that it's no longer a luxury. It's no longer an option. It's a necessity, right? What am I going to leave to my kids? If I get hurt and I can't work at all anymore, what does that look like for me? Once you start getting serious in your mindset, once you acknowledge what your obstacles are, now we can begin to talk about preparation, okay? Let's say you don't fall in all of those buckets. Let's say the finance bucket is your obstacle. And within that obstacle, It's the self-employed situation. All right, well, that tells you hook up with a CPA, hook up with your accountant, and start letting them know, hey, I know how we filed my taxes in the past, but the next 2 years or even the next year, my tax return, the tax strategy has to be different because I need to be able to qualify for a loan, right? Um, Maybe it is credit. Okay, let me hook up with somebody that can help me with my credit. Maybe it is debt to income. Do you need to downsize on your car note? Do you need to offload some debt? What is it that you need to do to overcome those obstacles, right? And so once you're able to identify the obstacles and start shifting your mind and making the proper preparation, then it all becomes kind of real. You'll be surprised how the pieces start coming together. Once you start putting one foot in front of the other, it's almost like, I don't know what you guys believe in, but I believe in God. But whatever your belief system is, you'd be surprised how things just start kind of aligning, and people start showing up, and you'd be in the grocery store one day and you run into somebody and you just start having I don't know, conversation, or they give you a business card and you look at it and it's like, oh, you're a real estate agent. Oh, that's interesting. I might need you in the future. I just started thinking about buying a home for my family. Or you run into somebody and I don't know, randomly maybe it's an old classmate. You run into them. Hey, what you been up to? Oh, nothing, I'm an accountant now and I just been running my firm. You're an accountant? Huh. I've just been thinking about needing an accountant because I need to change my tax strategy because I'm trying to qualify for a home loan next year, right? So when you start lining up in your mind what your goals are, things just start coming into place, right? And let's talk about, as those things come into place, you can get really creative. You guys have no idea how many resources and how many options actually exist when you get hooked up with the right people and the right team, and you start being very intentional about what you're doing. You're going to start coming across all kind of information and articles, even for my homeowners. Let's talk about aspiring homeowners. You might be thinking, oh man, like I haven't even bought a home yet. So this investment goal, when we talk about having an investment property, it just seems so far away. Like you're intimidated by the bigger picture because the bigger picture seems so far away. Well, you'd be surprised to know that as a homeowner, you can actually buy a duplex. You can actually, let me back up. And I'm going to bring a loan officer buddy of mine on here on one of these episodes to talk us through this. But you can actually, as a homeowner, buy up to a fourplex, live in one of the units and rent out the other three. So essentially, the bigger picture seems far away, but there's actually an option where you could become a homeowner and an investor at the same time. And my team, we've represented clients that do this quite often. And not only as a homeowner can you buy a duplex or up to a fourplex, live in one unit and rent out the others, and I'll have my buddy Damon come on to correct me. You can access and use down payment assistance up to a certain amount for this type of purchase. You can also use an FHA loan, which is, most first-time homeowners typically use this loan quite frequently. But you can actually use all of the resources and assistance that you would get as a homeowner buying a single-family home. You can use that on a duplex or a fourplex, but people don't know that. So they automatically go and just look for a single-family home. And when I say single-family home, I'm talking about just one house, right? You got one lot, one house. And they don't know that they can go and look for duplexes and fourplexes. So you guys keep that in mind. And honestly, when we talk about that as well, it made me think of something where I had a potential client a few months ago where we were talking through the option of getting a fourplex where they can live in one of the doors and rent out the other three doors. And they were so concerned about, well, yeah, but what will other people think when they come to visit me and I'm living in an apartment? And it's like, what? You okay? So that takes me back to mindset, because if that's what you're thinking about, you're thinking about this wrong. I have the opportunity to purchase a fourplex, right? So I own all of these units. I'm living in one, and I'm worried about when people come to visit me, whether or not they're going to be wondering why I'm living in a unit instead of an actual home, right? Because let's think about it. Let's just say, for example, and I'm just throwing a random number out. Let's say a fourplex is going to cost you $500,000. Well, a $500,000 fourplex, you're getting 4 units. Now, if you take that same $500,000 and you buy one home, right, a $500,000 house, obviously that's going to be a big, grand, home with the swirling staircase and maybe even a pool in the back and the covered grill outside and all that kind of stuff. So for the wow factor, $500,000, you buying a home. For the wow factor purposes, yeah, I see what you're trying to do. But when we're talking about wealth building purposes, and you're talking about a real flex and have real wow factor, that's pulling up to a fourplex unit where you're bringing in income, and those other the other renters, them paying rent is covering the expense of the entire fourplex. Like, when we talk about mindset shift, you can line up 2 people side by side and one thinks differently than the other, and they're going to go in different directions just because it's about perspective. And so I just wanted to throw that out there in case you guys didn't know about that. And that's another reason why mindset is so important. And don't get caught up in keeping up with the Joneses or what somebody else is going to think or what it looks like. You need to be practical for what your goals are and what it is you're trying to accomplish. Even when I think about income tax time, you'd be surprised what type of checks people are out here getting in income tax time, right? Because I hear people say, well, how can I become an investor? Like, I need a down payment. Or even as a homeowner, even though there are assistance programs that can help homeowners with their down payment and stuff, there are still times where you need to have a certain amount of cash on your own to come up with. And people use the excuse of, well, I'm a single mom. I don't really have the extra cash where I can save up enough to be able to buy something or have my down payment. Let's talk about the income tax. Listen, I've had some people, I've seen $10,000 income tax checks, $16,000 income tax checks. Now, I don't know how and why and the formula behind them getting what they're getting. That's not my business. I'm gonna mind my business. But think about what we could do or what you could do with that money if you shifted your mindset and said, you know what? In a few more months, when tax season comes around, I know I'm expecting $9,500. Let me start having a conversation. Let me start talking to real estate industry professionals to figure out, what could this $9,500 get me? What can this do for me? Instead of going out and putting some new rims on your car. I don't even know if that was big back in the day. I don't know if people still like really big into putting rims on the car or not, but y'all doing something with this income tax money. So whether it's rims on the car, flat screen TVs, taking a vacation, I don't know, whatever it is y'all doing with it. And I'm curious to know. So y'all need to drop me a line or send me an inbox or something. Tell me what y'all been doing with these $10,000 income tax checks. But think about this time, the next tax season. And even if you don't get it, maybe you're somebody that doesn't get that kind of income tax check. You know somebody in your family who's getting it. A niece, a nephew, a cousin, a daughter, somebody that you know is getting it. Just putting it in their ear. Hey, tax time rolls around, I got an idea. Like, we can go to the tax auction and buy a vacant piece of land from the auction for $3,000. Like, you don't even have to use it all. Just let's use a piece of it. And even if you don't know what you're going to do with that vacant piece of land, just the fact that you've used you had a resource in front of you and you used it to create an asset for yourself. Like, how much better could you feel, knowing that, okay, I didn't just splurge on shopping or whatever the case may be. Like, I'm gonna put that to the side and I'm going to establish some wealth, right? What if you went to a tax auction and paid $5,000 for a property and come to find out the value of that property is $25,000? So you just paid $5,000 for something that's valued at 25, meaning you can purchase it at the auction, turn right around and resell it to somebody else and flip that vacant piece of land and make more money. So you just have to get comfortable with changing your mindset. That's why I keep saying that, because until you do that, none of this stuff I'm talking about and none of this stuff that we're going to be talking about in future episodes is going to matter. So let's be clear. Change your mindset and y'all stop, doing reckless stuff with these income tax checks. Let's talk about, even with that, when we talk about shifting your mindset, having the conversation, making this a common conversation at home, okay, is equally as important. Remember, because when we talked about the lack of support, when we talked about those of you that may have a spouse, you want to get them on board. You want to get them fired up about buying into the vision for the family. If you have smaller kids, you want to start those conversations early around them, because, like, so for an example, like, this has nothing to do with real estate necessarily, more along the lines of financial literacy, because everything we're talking about today is financial literacy related, right? Because we're talking about credit and budgeting and making better decisions with your money so that you can invest and purchase homes. But let's just talking about getting your family on board and starting them early. I'll give you guys an example. Just yesterday, I took my 8-year-old daughter to the credit union, Shell Federal Credit Union. Now, I can't speak for any other ones. I'll just talk about Shell. But they have a program where your kids ages 6 to 15 years old, they can get a checking and a savings account. But the cool thing about it, because I think this is the part that stood out for me, because I know that other banks, you can get your kids signed up, but I know the age limit is a little bit higher. They don't allow them to start as young as 6. But what really stood out to me was that they give them their own debit card. So my 8-year-old, she was so excited. I don't know. She probably I don't know. She hadn't really figured out, and we hadn't gotten to the lesson yet of how money actually gets put on that card. But we're about to start that journey. She has her own card, has her name on it, her own, all that. She created her own PIN number. They gave her own username and password to set up digital banking. So guess what? Now I can start the process of, this is what banking is. When you make a deposit, when you swipe money, when you swipe for a purchase, that money gets deducted from your account, and now you're left with this amount of money. This is how you check to see how much you have left. This, when you get money for chores, you don't spend it all. We're going to transfer some to your savings. This you don't touch, this you can. So starting those conversations early, can you imagine what that would do for our families? And just moving forward, you can be the one to set the tone for changing the trajectory of your family and generations to come, and how you guys are going to move as a unit. But outside of that, just having those common conversations around the house collectively about what it is we're doing to move forward, and to create a better future for ourselves financially. Even when I think about just home ownership and investing and just building wealth in general, there was a study done. I don't remember the exact year, and I don't have it in front of me, but CNN, they did an inequality study. And I'm not here to make this a black versus white thing at all, but it was a inequality study to talk about the wealth gap between, black families versus white families, and where the disparities come from, basically. And the statistics were really eye-opening. And if anybody is interested, I can post it somewhere or share it with you. But from what I gathered, it was interesting to see that the Black families, we started off behind, right? And when we looked into the reason as to why that was, we started off behind for multiple reasons. But one of the main reasons that Black families started off behind when it comes to just wealth inequality, it was a lack of inheritance, right? In other cultures, they're really, really intentional with life insurance policies, right? So when they pass away or somebody dies, and you'd be surprised how many of them are inheriting $1 million off a life insurance policy, right? So not only they don't have to scramble to figure out how we're going to bury grandpa. Grandpa already has a policy where it's set up. My funeral expenses, I prepare for that ahead of time, and now I'm going to give you a jump start in life. And even if it's not $1 million, it could be $100,000, $200,000. I mean, just the thought process behind them having something set up for their families, and I'll speak for some of us. Y'all can be honest. But I'll go ahead and be honest for the Black folks when I say we're tired of selling fish dinners to figure out how we're going to bury our cousin, or something unexpected happens and we all have to set up a GoFundMe and cook barbecue and sell a barbecue dinner to try to bury our loved ones. So we're already behind. We're left with their debt. We're stuck with their bills. And so, grief is one thing, but now we're grieving even more because we have a handful of responsibility and debt that's being left to us versus, some of the other cultures that prepare a little better. They were already ahead of us because, they've inherited opportunities. They start the conversations early. They know, hey, when mom passes away, she already told me about a $500,000 policy that she has, and this is what we're going to do with it. Sometimes in our culture, the Black culture, somebody will die, and let's say grandma does leave behind a property or a house. They never schooled us on it, so we inherit property, and then we don't know to pay the taxes on it. And so we inherit property and then lose it in the tax auction because, grandma left us a property but never had a conversation. And we don't know that there's still responsibilities, as being a property owner that we have to take care of. And so starting the conversations early, even throughout my real estate career, I'll say this, I've noticed a very big difference in different cultures where and I won't say this isn't all the time, this isn't everybody, but I have seen cases where I might have a family and they don't look like me, right? And they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna put down a down payment of $100,000. We just got married and our parents are gifting us $100,000 to start our life as a newlywed couple as a down payment on a house. And I'm thinking, that's your gift? like I got an air fryer as my as my wedding gift, and like y'all are getting $100,000 in a gift, right? Even some of the other cultures where I see where they will live together. It might be 3 or 4 different families living in a house, right? So that they can save money. One for, and one, they save up enough to work themselves out. They bought their own home. Now somebody, and then they go on to get their home, and then there's 2 or 3 families left within that one house, and they all get to stack their money, and then when they stack enough, they go off and they buy. So everybody else seems to just be working together and having opportunities passed down to them, whereas I see more often with Black families. Like I've been in the real estate industry and sales for 20 years, and I have yet to have, an African-American family come to me that was in that type of situation where they were living a couple families at a time to save money, one family at a time, so they can all branch off and get their own. Or have they inherited, or not inherited, but been given a gift of $100,000 down payment? It always seems that we're in struggle mode or survival mode to figure out Hey, what kind of down payment assistance y'all got? Which, let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. I love our down payment assistance programs, but it should be icing on a cake, right? We should be able to offer that option as, hey, I can add this on top of the money you already have. Or we can add this, even though you already have your down payment saved or it was gifted to you, from grandpa. We can have this down payment assistance stacked on top of that money to help buy down your interest rate, to bring down your payment even lower, right? So down payment assistance programs, they're great. We can always use them as multiple as an option to stack on top of your own resources that you already have. But what I'm saying is that it should not be struggle survival mode where all the time, where unless this other resource exists, I don't stand a chance to do it on my own. So we have to start thinking differently. How do we set our families up? How do we set, those of you that have younger children, how do you put yourself in a position to where when those kids turn 21 or they go off and get married at 26 and you want to give them something significant, what are we passing along? And so now is the time to start thinking about that. And what better way to do it than real estate? Real estate is one of the most important investment vehicles that you can use. Some of our top millionaires and billionaires of the world will tell you that a portion of their success and a portion of their wealth is because of real estate. Like even if the market changes or it pivots and it becomes steady, and it doesn't do anything for a while, the likelihood of real estate depreciating and going down in value is very slim. Yeah, the market may get stale and it's just steady for a moment, but it's not like a car, right? You go buy a car and the minute you drive off the lot, it's already depreciated. So that it's not like a car. So you just can't, and I hate to say it because, anytime you're calling something an investment, there is a certain risk involved. I guess the question is, how big or how risky is that risk? But when you think about real estate as an investment, regardless if it's home ownership or purchasing an actual investment property, real estate is one of the safest, investments. So why not be more intentional and get your head in the game and shift your mindset to say, okay, how do I get a piece of this? How do I tap into this and get my feet wet a little bit? And there's enough for everybody to go around. When I talk about real estate, people that have been to my classes or have been around me long enough know that I always reference the game of Monopoly. Okay, the Monopoly board game. And it's so funny. I don't even know why I talk about this board game because in my family, playing Monopoly will start a fight. Like, there's always somebody that has their own, I'm getting off track here, but it's always someone that has their own rule or they want to come up with their own instruction of how something to go. And then somebody ends up flipping over the board. Cause it's like, okay, if I can't win, ain't nobody winning. So we don't get to play Monopoly too often in our family. But when I think about the game of Monopoly, think about the actual object of the game, right? In Monopoly, there's, you have the dice, right? You're rolling the dice, but the object is for each player to go around and land on different properties and to buy up those properties, right? Not only do you want to buy those properties, you want to develop those properties, right? When you think about it, you playing Monopoly, you land on Park Place. Oh, that's the expensive block. Let me purchase Park Place. And then when I get some more money up, I'm going to put a house on it. Matter of fact, I'm going to put 4 houses on it. And then you get some more money up. Let me put a hotel on Park Place because I know when somebody else rolls around the block and they hit my property on Park Place, like I'm about to break the bank. And so the object of the Monopoly game is to see how many pieces of property can you buy and develop so that when other players land on your spot, and, you make them bankrupt, like they have to pay up. And so essentially, if you translate that into real life, think about that. Obviously, we don't want to send people into bankruptcy. Like that's not what I'm pitching here. But think about, if you change your mindset and maybe where you grew up, you notice, oh, that lot's for sale. I wonder how much they want for that lot. And you'd be surprised how many people are doing owner financing. You don't even have to go through a bank. The owner may be willing to allow you to put a little deposit down and pay them directly over the years. And bam, you own that property. Then you see another one. When you start thinking about it, opportunities will start showing up and popping up in front of you. But I always like to think of the Monopoly board game, because that's the object here. The object is to, and like I said, those of you that are not homeowners yet, start with that. Okay, let me take care of my family first. Let's get us stable with a roof over our head, place that we own. Okay, let's start here. Now, what can I buy next? What does the next opportunity look like? And that's all I want to get you guys thinking about today is mindset. This is no longer an option or a luxury or something that just the well-off people get to do. This is something that everyday people need to start lining up for themselves. Preparation is key. Don't use those excuses or the obstacles against you to say, well, I'm self-employed. I don't have W-2s. No, that's not an excuse. Team up with the right people. See how much money you need to start showing and claiming on those taxes. Change your tax strategy to align with your loan strategy. That's how you're going to get to the next level. And so I'm excited about what's to come. I cannot wait for the next episodes to have different people coming in and just pouring into you guys to get you guys going and excited about changing your mind, getting some stuff, breaking out of old habits, breaking some generational habits. That's a whole nother story. But thank you for listening today. As always, if you have any topics that you want to hear about, you want more insight on, any guests, industry professionals that you want to hear from, feel free, drop us a line and we're going to make it happen. So until next time, I'll see you soon. Again, I am Matasha LaQuinn, the Queen Bee of Real Estate, and you've been listening to The Throne.